Home's a CG animated kids movie made by DreamWorks. It's about a alien race that moves from planet to planet, being pursued by another alien race, and it has to leave its current world and it decides to settle on Earth. And its story basically revolves around one particular member of this alien race called the Boov, whose name is O.
Voiced
by Jim Parsons. Yep, who did a good job. Mm-hmm. And he basically teams up with a little human girl. Well, she's portrayed as a little girl, but she drives a car, so she's not that young.
Yeah.
That was a little confusing.
In a minute I'll get on to why I thought that was weird in terms of something else.
Yep, okay. So he teams up with a human girl and her pet cat, mm-hmm. and they go on an adventure to do a bunch of stuff that we won't get into because we don't want to do any spoilers. Yep. Because we're not the target audience for this film, we can't really talk about it in the same way we would talk about most movies.
Yeah.
What we can do is we can talk about it from the technical aspects of it,
yeah.
but we can also compare it to other films like it.
But that's the funny thing, because I'd critique something like a Pixar animation film from a perspective of a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between, I guess, DreamWorks and Pixar.
Yeah.
They're solely aiming. Home was solely aiming at a 10-year-olds
or lower. Yeah.
Whereas Up, 10 minutes into that film.
Yeah. I guess that is one strange thing about kids' movies, because the good ones get called family films.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some good kids' movies that are just straight up kids' movies, but most of them, the ones with more universal appeal, they get called family movies.
I don't want to give Home too much leeway, man.
That's very true.
Because that's the thing. Up was an incredible animated film.
Yeah.
Kids film.
Yeah. Whereas
Home wasn't. And we've got to talk about why it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I think the big thing was, it had cute ideas and stuff, and it never really.
So should we talk about the good first or the bad first?
I think we'll talk about the bad, man, because
okay. Well, the worst thing about this film, other than the title being generic and stupid, was Rihanna.
Yeah, just voice casting wise. Well, that's
the
thing.
Not just that. That was a big thing too, because she's not a good actor.
Yep.
But the other big thing was the fact that having her in the movie also meant that they had her music.
Yeah, so it was an advertisement for her new album.
Yeah, but it's worse than that though, because a lot of the times it was used, it was not appropriate.
It just felt like whenever there was a little emotional shift in tone, they bung over a fucking Rihanna song.
Do you remember the scene from the trailer in which there's O is dancing in the car?
No.
You remember when he's like he's waving his hands in the air like he just don't care, and he's changing colours. And
that was painful.
Yeah, right. So in the trailer for the film, they use a different song over that part of the movie, a much more appropriate song.
A Rihanna song?
No.
Right.
It works a lot. Well, I don't think it is.
Yeah.
It works a lot better in the trailer than it did in the actual movie. And because I saw the trailer before watching it, and I remember thinking that this is not as good as what I remember from the trailer. This scene, it was not a dancey enough song.
There's just something painful about if you know that Rihanna's voicing it. She's like, let's listen to some real music. And fucking Rihanna comes on. And
The character played by her is basically saying her music's good, which it was just The
other thing with her casting, I think you could tell like her voice wasn't cast right in terms of the age of the kid.
Yeah.
And she sounded, she could pass as a 20-year-old maybe, but the kid was cast as 12 or something.
Yeah, like the lowest age you could possibly realistically drive a car, which is about 12. She
never had any issues with the car, man. That's the weird thing.
Yeah. No, she seemed like it. Well, she crashes her car at the start, but that's because she's being chased by aliens or whatever.
Yeah.
She was, for the most part, a pretty confident driver.
She knows what the fuck to do. She knows more than me.
And also, she's driving a flying car. And she takes to it like a really experienced driver who just picks it up really fast.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
But, those things we can forgive, I think.
Yeah. So another bad thing about this film was that, earlier I said that we can compare it to other films in the genre, right? Well, kids' movies to me, they have two things about them. They can have heart, and they can be manipulative. One good, one bad.
Yep.
And Home has both, definitely, but it has a bit too much manipulation.
It was trying to, it was going through the motions of, making you, and in that way it was manipulative.
Yeah, well, so there's, emotional scenes in this film, and some of them played well. Some of them actually felt real. Yeah. Felt like the people who were making the film really cared. Mm-hmm. But some of them really felt just really manipulative and quite cynical.
Sure, but in any sense of any film, there's a certain amount of manipulation.
Oh, yeah.
You want to take someone through...
Yeah, from the point of view of the filmmakers, it's always manipulation. It's just how it feels to the viewer, though. Because some of the stuff in that film really felt really like it was. It really felt real. It felt like it drew me in.
Sure.
It had heart, you know.
Yeah.
But most of the emotional scenes didn't at all, and that was a big problem I had with the film as well.
Yeah.
However, there is some good stuff about this film. I already mentioned the fact that some of the scenes had heart. Yeah. There's one scene, I won't give away the context of the scene, but there's one scene where there's an important beat that happens with the Rihanna character, and they could have played it with dialogue and made it a standard scene, but they didn't do that. There's no dialogue, even though the characters are talking to each other. You couldn't hear what they were saying. It was just music, and no sound other than music.
And they've cranked up a Rihanna song.
Yeah, okay, so it is a Rihanna song, but... that scene felt like it had heart to me. That song could have been any song. It didn't really matter what the song was. The important thing was that they took out the dialogue. And this dialogue could have been viewed by the director as being important and needed to be in the film, but realistically it didn't.
Sure. Yep.
And he made a good decision there.
And that can work, man. In anything. It can work in a fucking, live action drama.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And maybe we've been too harsh on Rihanna in terms of she's always chucking her songs in there, but it could be any song. We don't. It could be anything.
Yeah, and
but the thing still not work.
The thing about the Rihanna thing though is that it felt like a contract thing. Like she came onto the board to the movie because they said we'll have at least X number of songs over key scenes in the film, and it was pretty obvious.
That's probably my biggest qualm with the fucking film.
Yeah.
We'll go back to the bad things about it. There was a real contrast to me in really pretty animation and really ugly animation.
Right.
Whereas Pixar gets it right in terms of there's a certain realism to what they do.
Well, they spend a lot of time making those movies.
They do. Yeah. I'm not a fan of DreamWorks animation. I remember mentioning to you during Home. There's a scene in the water. The water looked fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
But there were moments in there that just looked ugly. And there's only so much you can do with a sort of a blob of a character.
Yeah.
Facial expressions and stuff worked.
Yeah.
They sort of conveyed what they were.
I thought the design of the cat was quite stylish.
Sure.
It was a bit. It wasn't.
Little.
Yeah, it wasn't. Cute. It wasn't realism. They weren't going for realism with the design of the cat. They were making it a bit stylized.
I don't think they were going for realism at all. But there were moments in, like the water, that looked really realistic.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how they did the water, because it looks so good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But by contrast, the rest of it didn't really...
There was some bad stuff. Any time where there were like crowd shots with lots of people, it just started looking really bad. Yeah. Yeah.
And stuff in there with, how they travel in those big balls or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, that comes down to, what the story's about and... the concept of what they're travelling in. You can't really make that look any better than what it is.
No, and that's one thing I wanted to bring up is that even though the animation wasn't great at times, I thought the design of both the alien species and their technology was quite cool.
Yep.
Not original as such, but interesting and definitely like a good choice.
Yeah.
The bubbles, they travel around in bubbles and stuff.
Yep.
And I just thought
and the bad guy aliens or whatever they were.
The Gorg, they looked really cool.
And then without spoilers, towards the end, there's a cool little moment to do with those guys.
Yeah.
And, that was
and
cute.
the changing colours thing and the fact that those antennae on their head of their noses, the booth. Yeah, so I thought the design team, the art team, did some great stuff. Yeah.
I mean, I keep using the word cute, but that's really
cute,
charming.
That's the really aliens, they were going for almost Mars Attacks style cute thing.
Yeah, that worked.
Yeah. I just thought I'd give a bit of background about the director. So the director is Tim Johnson, and he started his career quite interestingly with. Do you remember the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode Homer Cubed, where he goes behind the bookshelf and he turns all 3D?
Yeah, I think so.
He was the supervisor, consultant.
Oh, okay. So
on that.
When would that have been?
In the 90s. Early 90s, I guess. Yeah. Mid 90s maybe. Yeah. And that was the first credit he has. And I thought that was really interesting because that was one of the really early. He doesn't have a feature directing credit until Ants.
And Ants is a Pixar film.
No, Ants was the start. Ants was the first, to my knowledge, the first DreamWorks film. Because DreamWorks started. Jeffrey Katzenberger started DreamWorks. He was a Disney exec who left Disney. He left Disney because he had a falling out with Michael Eisner, and he started his own company. And he basically just really pettily went after Disney and they had this big war.
Oh, that's the thing. Yeah. So Ants and
Bug's Life. That was the first round of the war.
Right.
And Ants lost. Ants was not a good film compared to A Bug's Life. It had its charms, but it was no.
But he hasn't necessarily failed in that respect, Because DreamWorks is still a heavy hitter.
Well, DreamWorks kind of won the war with Shrek. Yeah. Because at that time, Shrek and Shrek 2 were both really, really huge movies.
I mean, that's the thing. Shrek was, a better film than Home, but I think in terms of story and, the cleverness of the film, I guess. But I still thought it was ugly.
Yeah. So after Ants, his next directing credit is Sinbad, a Sinbad movie, which I didn't see. And I never even heard of. And then he did Over the Hedge, which I saw the trailer for and I remember hearing about, but I never saw the film because I'm not that big into CG animated films for the most part.
Yeah.
And then after Home, he's already signed on to another DreamWorks project called Rumblewick, which is another CG animation. All his films have been DreamWorks CG animations.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's his whole career.
Which, he's good at it. He's doing what he's doing. That's fine.
So let's get into some of the other actors. I thought, other than Rihanna, I thought all the actors did a good job.
Well, I didn't know the actors until
the end credits. Yeah.
So I didn't realise it was Steve Martin.
Yeah. No, I didn't either.
Saying that, he doesn't really have that distinctive a voice.
No, and J-Lo, Jennifer Lopez was in it as well, and I didn't pick up that
like
was
Jim
her.
Parsons, he could pick in a fucking heart.
Yeah, and the other guy I picked was Matt L. Jones, who plays Badger in Breaking Bad. I was really pleased to see him getting a role in a movie because I've always thought he was great since I first saw him in Breaking Bad, and I always wanted to. Yeah, it's something,
Sure.
And it's good to see him get a job
and
get work.
Distinctive voice,
that's
what you want.
He was appropriate for the role, and he did a good job. Yeah, so I was pleased about that. So how would you rate Home?
I feel like 3 out of 5 is too generous, so I'm probably going to go 2.5 Rihanna songs out of 5.
Yeah, I agree. 2.5 Rihanna songs out of 5. Yeah.
So should we talk about 71?
Okay, so 71 is a British film made about an event that happened during the Troubles, which is a conflict between the British government and the Northern Irish. And I'm not sure if it was a true story or not. They never really made that clear in the film.
Yeah.
But it basically concerns one incident, a troop of British soldiers who go into an area in Belfast and some bad stuff happens and
sort of on the border between
So they explained at the start of the film that Belfast is basically divided in half. One side being loyalist, British loyalist Protestants, and the other half being Catholics who fight the British. And it's basically on the border. The operation in the film that the British soldiers go on is sort of right on the border between the two. That was my understanding.
Yep.
And it basically goes tits up as you would expect and turns into a sort of action thriller involving some IRA type guys.
Yeah, essentially what happens is they're forming a barricade. The
British Army guys are assisting some Belfast police officers who are trying to find hidden weapons.
Right, and our main character, Jack O'Connell,
played by Jack O'Connell,
he chases after a little kid who's pinched a rifle or
something.
So he's taken away from the main conflict.
Yeah.
So and then like you said, it turns into a bit of an action thriller thing.
Yeah.
Focused around this guy trying to get back to his regiment.
Yeah, the pretty classic soldier behind the enemy lines story, except it's not a war film. It's not even really a straight up action film. It's a thriller with action elements, I would say.
Yeah, and it's what side is this person on, what side is this person
on? Confused.
Where do the loyalties lie between certain...
Yeah, grey world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which, was never confusing, but if we're going to get into the bad shit, that would be my sort of complaint.
Yeah.
It fucked around with that a little bit too much. It felt a little unnecessary.
Yeah.
In a way.
So the director of this film is a French guy who was born in Paris but raised in London from the age of 2. So he's French by birth but British by
passport.
Yeah. So he's technically French, but he's got British sensibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And his background is in British TV drama.
Right.
He started on. He did the first 4 episodes of Secret Diary of a Call Girl, and then he did a British a horror miniseries called Dead Set, which is really great. He did all the episodes of that, and then he worked on a kid gangster thing called Top Boy. I have seen actually all the stuff he's done unknowingly. Right. I watched all of those. And
whereas I have seen none of it.
Yeah, right. And I thought his work was really great. I can't actually remember which episodes he did by memory, but the episodes of those shows are all great. And Dead Set's really, really good. Yeah, and so...
In terms of that shit, man, direction-wise, I had no issues.
Yeah, and this is his debut film, so it was impressive. I was impressed by the direction, definitely.
I mean, when you start off, being quite political about the whole situation, and then, quite quickly turns into a genre film. Yeah. Is good in some ways. In some ways you wanted it to continue being more political. It depends what mindset you're in.
Yeah.
It stops saying something, sort of half an hour in, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just, it became a cat and mouse chase thing. It stopped sort of saying...
It did, and I think part of the reason why it seemed to me like the screenplay was trying to not offend anyone, not take a side, that's admirable, because a lot of the movies about the Troubles, like Bloody Sunday, they take a side hard, and it does alienate viewers.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Bloody Sunday is, that's a grim fucking film.
It is.
This began as a grim kind of film.
Yeah.
When it moved over into that territory of being just a cat and mouse chase film, you kind of stopped giving a shit because you.
Yeah. I see.
You really could, that could be set somewhere else.
Yeah.
That aspect of the film, this dude trying to get back somewhere, it could be set. In a completely different environment.
That's true, yeah, and that was part of the reason why I'm not sure whether it's a true story or not. A lot of the time when you watch a true story film, even if there's no card that comes up saying based on a true story, you kind of feel it.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like this wasn't.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I care because it doesn't need to be.
Yeah,
either way.
That's what I mean. Is that this film, like you say, you could drop it into any context and it would sort of work, which is kind of cool.
It's one side versus another side with someone in the middle trying to find their, which I'm not going to complain about that aspect. I went into this thing completely blind. Yeah. So
I hadn't seen the trailer or anything.
I had no idea, which way it was going to go. I was happy for it to go that way.
Yeah.
Until sort of the third act, maybe, where it just started. This is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's shit to see things coming in a film like this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I was hoping it would be a bit more clever with that sort of stuff, that I wouldn't quite see everything a mile away.
But did it need to be? That's the thing. I don't think it did.
Maybe not, yeah. So, the actors, the cast was stellar in terms of... the British... all the British and Irish actors were all top-notch, top-tier actors. And they're all... I mean, the roles in it weren't particularly demanding.
No.
But the actors all really delivered really subtle performances, which is another,
Yeah, you say like not particularly demanding, but in the hands of someone else, another young man.
Well, what I mean,
main role.
What I mean is that Jan Damage could have directed these guys to deliver performances that you might expect of a lower quality film, where they're a bit more over the top.
Yeah.
But they were actually really subtle and nuanced performances for what they were, which is another great nod to this director.
Yeah.
I'm really going to keep an eye on this guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, my complaints about this film. It's
more
kind of not even
story.
worth talking about, because nothing really offended me.
No.
In terms of from a filmmaking perspective.
Yeah.
It was all just, it was what it needed to be.
Yeah.
In every aspect, it was pretty gorgeously shot, and it never needed to be over the top.
I think you could have cut a bit out of that movie. Yep. There was a few sequences in it which sort of went on a bit long and felt a bit indulgent.
Yeah.
So it could have been tightened up a bit.
Like sitting on him crying or whatever.
Yeah, sitting on him looking out a window or walking down the street and stuff like that.
You can see what they were trying to do.
Oh yeah, for sure. But they didn't quite nail those bits, I thought. There was a few performances in the film that stood out for me.
Yeah.
One was the guy who played Boyle, David Wilmot. He's the leader of the IRA.
Yeah.
He looked really period. He had his sensibilities of the early 70s really down.
And he gave you that, he sort of set you in that time frame, just looking at his look,
Yeah, but it was more than just his look. He had his gestures and he had his sensibilities really nailed.
He was every time he was on screen, you were kind of a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what you wanted to get from that dude.
But the main performance, even though it's a minor role, that really stood out for me was the young boy. Credited.
Yeah, he was very good.
He's credited only as Loyalist Boy, I think. But Corey McKinley, who's just a young boy, a young child actor, he was amazing. And,
man.
Yeah, really nailed the performance.
All line delivery, when he was talking to those guys and they offer him a beer and he sort of, they're like, oh, it's just a little kid, we'll fuck with him a bit. And he just turns on them and goes, fucking what?
His performance reminded me a lot of the kid in This Is England.
That is exactly what I was about to say. Man.
Except he's younger.
Yeah.
So it's even better.
Yeah. It's incredible. I made that comparison as soon as he came on screen.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he was the performance highlight of the film for me. A lot of critics have given praise to Jack O'Connell, and I didn't really feel that so much. He wasn't bad.
I wouldn't even say, he wasn't. He was passable. I'd say he was good.
Yeah, okay.
He didn't need to be anything other than a little bit sort of blank and dealing with his surroundings.
Yeah, he was good in the role, but I guess what I mean is that the role itself didn't really seem to lend itself to getting critical praise for performance.
Sure. Yep.
And I was a bit confused by that. Like, there was other roles in the film which were more demanding.
What more could he have done?
Yeah.
All he needs to do is look terrified, cry occasionally. And
I remember after we saw it that you were talking about the music in the film, so I wondered if you want to get into that a bit.
Well, after we saw it, I found myself humming it.
Right.
Which I generally feel is a good sign.
Yeah, I mean...
But then again...
There are multiple schools of thought about film composers, and that, one school of thought is that if you don't remember it, if it just bled into the rest of the film and felt at home, then it's a good score.
Yeah.
And if it's stuck out a bit, it might be a sign.
I understand that, and that's why having slept on it...
Right.
Initially I thought that was a good thing. Having slept on it, I now realise that it probably wasn't a good thing, because you don't need a big sort of it wasn't blasting, but like a standout score over a film like this.
Yeah, so, you don't.
And I don't remember it. I couldn't hum it now.
Yeah.
So, my thoughts are now that I don't really have much to say about the score. Whereas initially I had a lot to say about it.
Yeah. So the composer was a guy called David Holmes, and he's done quite a lot of stuff in the past, a lot of movies.
A lot of Soderbergh films.
Yeah, he was one of Soderbergh's go-to guys. Yeah. He's I would call him a great musical talent, but maybe not for me.
Maybe not suited for
this kind of film. Yeah, I did. I think
from Ocean's 11, which is
a lot of the Soderberghs he'd done, with the exception of Haywire, the spy thriller type movie. A lot of the Soderberghs he'd done weren't like this. They were very different styles of film.
Different films.
Yeah. So how would you rate 71?
I'm going to give it probably 3 berets out of 5.
Right. I would give it 3.5 berets.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, it was a very entertaining film. Kept me, kept my attention while I was watching it. But it was one of those movies that once you finish watching it, you start thinking about it and it starts falling apart a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this is the very limits of a 3, almost a 4 for me.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a very strong 3.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Cheers.
Cheers.